So we're in a huddle, Q&As, let's do it. Who's first? Gregory.
Where do you get your models for tactical part?
Tactical development? Fantastic question. I would say through a collection of personal experience and through study of possibilities. See, tactical development is an area where coaches, particularly coaches that come from outside the sport, can really make a difference. Like they can think differently and they can bring something to the sport. Sport is unchanging until someone does something really different. And then everyone else says, geez, that was obvious, I should have thought of that. You know, the 3 stages of truth. When someone does something different, it's rejected, criticised, and then everyone says, well, I knew about that all the time. So it's good to get stuff from outside the sport. Let's say, for example, baseball, traditional sport in your country, yes?
Yeah.
And for many decades, how did a baseballer strengthen themselves for playing baseball?
Wrist curls and...
No, before that. I'm a little bit older than that, John.
Swing a couple of bats.
Before that, but I agree with you, swing the bat, then swing heavier bats. What was the next phase of strength development in baseball? And it dominated for decades. You're too young. Putting your hand in the sand, get a bucket, put sand in the bucket, put your hand in the sand and do this. Baseball was really quite slow to take on strength training, and I don't blame them because now they've gone in a direction which is probably resulting in more surgeries than necessary. There's a certain technique that's been popularised in baseball for the shoulder. I'm trying to remember what was the elbow, was it? Anyway, there's a certain name, but anyway, it's like everyone has to have one. So there's no one answer for that, but it does. Being creative and looking outside the sport can really change things.
So early on, when you talked about studying athletic movement and being able to improve anybody's athletic movement, what are the key things that you take a look at, and what do you study beforehand?
Okay, so studying diverse sport really helps, and studying long-term development in terms of knowing that if you do this, this will happen 10 years later. Studying sequential sport involvement. I'll give you an example. If you watch the Red Bull Enduro series, they have, I think, 6 events globally. It's a phenomenal series. I'm getting exposed to it through my son. They have one called the Hare Scramble in an old iron ore mine or some mine there in Austria. It's just phenomenal to watch. And the pattern at the moment is the dominating enduro races have a high trials background. So let's say there's half a dozen off-road disciplines. You've got trials, motocross, enduro, and there's a few hybrids. Supercross and this, and there's aerials, you know, there's about 6. But we're led to believe, based upon observing performances, that sequentially, probably the first discipline that a young rider should be dominating in is in trials. So get them into trials early if you want them to go further. Because it's one thing to be able to twist the throttle and go fast, but you don't develop the balance that you get from trials. So the same could be said in martial arts, or any discipline. There's a sequence to go through to optimise the athletic development. Now, one of the reasons why people gravitate towards strength training is because if they miss that window, and they say, oh, well, I can overcome it now. And then people model them. 6-year-olds model 26-year-olds who are looking for a competitive advantage. They don't have to. They can follow the optimal sequence of sport. So I learnt the hard way because I used to get athletes, say in the Canadian ski team, the coaches would say, you know, they're just not athletic, and they'd say, can you fix that in the gym, Ian? And I say, I don't know. I can't really take a time machine back and get them to play different sports. The things I get excited about when I'm an athlete, I want soft tissue, I want genetics. You can overcome this stuff. I want to touch them and know that they're really good genetics. I want them to be flexible because then I know that they'll learn skill quickly, and I want them to be coordinated. They're my 3 biggies, and 4 obviously is determination. So the physical quality that I appreciate the most is soft tissue. The technical development, the thing that's needed is flexibility. The coordination development, which will determine speed and technical execution, is developed at the early age. And then the psychological determination of I'm driven to win, and I believe I can win. So I want to shape it as much as I can, but then if I inherit you with what you got, then I want to know what's available. So what I know about you, for example, is that even though you're not possessing the cat-like agility that I'm looking for, I know that you've got it. And I know two things. I know that you've had enough movement as a youth to be able to regain it, and I know that you're focused enough and disciplined enough to rehearse it to bring it back in. Now, if you hadn't played those sports at an earlier age that you played, like skating, surfing, basketball, all those sort of sports, if you'd been on a Nintendo machine or you'd just been playing that one sport, then I wouldn't be as confident about how far we could go in improving that aspect. And that doesn't mean writing an athlete off. I'm optimistic about it. I'll win no matter what. We'll overcome whatever adversities we've got. But I just know if there's an opportunity there, then I know the opportunity's there because of your history. Is that answering your question? Mm-hmm. It's an opportunity to improve. And you can see an athlete and their movement, and you can say, if I change their movement, we could do better. Not the only way we could do better, but that's one of the ways. And then I want to know what is their potential for changing their movement. So I want to know their background. I want to see them move in different ways. No one's brought that. You've been. I'll tell you, there's a great story. There was a movie out of New Zealand. You've got to watch it, called Once Were Warriors. And it reinforced the culture of the New Zealand Maori, which was a brutal culture. And they're very close to the warrior lifestyle. So it was a very physical environment. And it was Jake Damas, or something like that, who was a lead role. And he'd beat people up pretty quickly. He was a very good fighter. And in one scene, they were in a bar and there's a bloke, just got out of jail and he'd been doing all the weights in jail. So he was a big Maori. He was buffed as well. They could do his weight training. And then Jake cleans him up in about 3 seconds flat. And Jake walks away and says something like, too much weights, bro, not enough speed. It was just a classic, it was just a classic line. Reinforcing the reality, in my opinion, that you're not going to be as best as you can be if you allow that stiff movement to dominate. You're better than that, and you can do better than that. No one's just told you that. You know what I'm saying? And you're getting by whacking people. But if you came up against a fighter with greater fluency and agility, he would neutralise your physical dominance pretty quickly. Your strength and size dominance. Does that make sense? So we just know the opportunities. We don't call them weaknesses, we call them opportunities. So there's different tactical models. For example, Mike Tyson was an inside fighter. But when Mike Tyson lost his belief and lost his speed, then he couldn't do it. See, Mike Tyson used to do this. Mike Tyson used to do exactly what you're trying to do, but he did it really well. Mike Tyson would be on the outside and go bang. He'd go, when I say bang, bang, I'm talking about his steps. Bang, bang, and then with his hands, bang, bang. You with me? His feet brought him in really well and then went bang, bang. Now, if he didn't do it within 1 or 2 hits, then he's in trouble because an inside fighter is like, you're at risk. So his timing, when to come in, his speed of coming in, and his physical dominance once he was inside were the key. And as soon as he lost those three, he lost his self-belief about when to come in, he lost his timing, he lost his speed, he lost his, he just lost a few things. And then he suffered for it. And he didn't know what to do. He didn't have a tactical model. He could have had someone bring back that dominance, he could have regained that model, or he could have adapted his fighting, but he couldn't. All he could do was start biting people's ears off. And I feel very sorry for him, because no one was there helping him understand that. Like, if we generally couldn't have brought back that model, we could have given him another model. Does that make sense? Whereas some fighters, they fight, they're outside fighters. Some fighters are runners. Muhammad Ali was a runner. Do you understand what I'm saying? Muhammad Ali would avoid contact. And that worked for him at the time, but it could have been an era, something could have changed and it might not work for him. That's where you need to have that technical flexibility, or technical flexibility to change your approach. So what I do is I look at the threats to an athlete and I say, that's where you're going to get exposed, that's what we need to fix up on, and it will happen sooner or later. The longer you're in the game, it'll happen. You with me? Whatever is your weak link, someone will find it and exploit it. And then we prepare for that day.
So let's take someone like Floyd Mayweather.
Mm-hmm.
You ever watched him?
Not as much as I would have liked to, but I'm very familiar with the name.
So I was just going to ask, what opportunities would you say he
Yeah, I haven't studied him like Mike Tyson. I studied Mike Tyson pretty closely. Yeah. But if you and I sat and watched him for about 5 minutes, I'd sum it up in about 5 minutes. So we can do that over the next few days. You can pick any athlete, put the video on for me, and I will tell you what's going on. The faster that you can analyse the opportunity, the faster you understand why they win and why they lose, the faster you can reproduce it in other people. And that's my key. My key is being able to identify very quickly, if we change this, we will win or we will stay dominant. And my goal for an athlete is not only to win. I'm not there to get to the games. For some people that's enough. But I'm there to win, but I'm more than that, I'm there to win multiple times. You understand that the most successful Olympic athlete in history was Leonidas, whose record of 12 Olympic goals stood for 2,168 years until Phelps broke it. Phelps broke a 2,168-year-old record. Now, it won't be 2,168 years before Phelps's record gets broken, but it will be a long time. So Phelps is up to 13 or 14, but it took him 4 Olympic Games, if not 5 Olympic Games, to break past 12. He was at 11 up until this one. He broke it in this one, so he must have taken at least 2 in the last one.
But golds or medals? Golds.
Just counting golds. I'm not counting all the medals, I'm just counting golds. Okay. Leonidas, the diversity of sport wasn't as great, but he was considered having physical diversity in those days. He did a sprint, he did a middle distance event. When I say a middle distance, it might have been a 50 or 100. He might have done a 400, 200 or 400, but then he did an event with with armour on. So he had to have strength. So he was unusual in that era. They not only had speed and endurance, but he had the strength to show it because he did it with armour on. And that's why he's considered diverse in terms of his abilities. And Phelps is questioned about this because Phelps got a lot of questionings about Leonidas after this last Olympics, and Phelps was pretty humble about it. He said, well, no, I don't consider myself a better athlete. In those days, I don't know if I could have done what he did. But it's different times. But that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking to dominate, and complacency is what kills people. You're winning at your level, but if you want to go high, you've got to be prepared to dig a bit deeper in terms of opportunities. Another question?
So you put volleyball on the right-hand side?
So earlier on, we made a list of Olympic events, and we said, what events do I believe you'd need to have strength levels, say, in excess of 100 kilo squat? And I put volleyball on the right-hand side. Now, I put a lot of sports on the right as I would do it, but I know the Americans will perform on the left. So let's go with the question about volleyball.
Yeah, so that kind of just triggered a question in my mind, which is how important is maximal strength for jumping?
You can take any method and use that method to develop an outcome. Or you can be broader in your search and you combine a number of methods to get that outcome or more. And in doing so, have less wear and tear on the body and provide greater benefits to other aspects of the game. Does that make sense? So you could say, look at that athlete, he can squat 200 kilos, he's a volleyball player and he's a better player because of it. You can show effectiveness, but you can't show optimalness through maximal strength training in volleyball. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, optimalness is pretty hard to show.
Exactly, because the variables are unlimited. And that's a limitation with science though. I'm not being critical of science. Science has to be able to, the way to conduct modern day science, forgetting about the commercial biases, determining exactly what is studied and what they're allowed to publish, it requires on controlling all the variables. We've got to know all the variables. Like the way I do stretching, what scientific study in the world has been done using my approach to stretching? Don't even know what it is. There isn't a scientist on the planet that's ever done it with me long enough to know what I do. It's never going to get studied. So, in all due respect, science is never going to control the variables. Science is a very limited way of viewing sport. And if you limit your training methods to what has been scientifically proven, you're an idiot and you're shortchanging the athlete. And that's not being disrespectful to science. I'm just telling you science is behind the times and it's hamstrung by being able to control the variables. It's hamstrung by able to, commerce dictates what gets published. End of story. John.
No, were you finished? Okay. Can you talk about, actually this same question, but just from an absolute strength and a relative strength perspective, and how much that has to do with athletic ability?
Okay, so an interpretation or definition of absolute versus relative. Absolute might say, okay, all athletes have to squat 100 kilos. Relative might be saying, oh, I have to squat their body weight. Now, I don't prescribe to either of those theories. I'm referring to them more as an observation of what's being done. That makes sense? Because I could take a volleyballer, right, and help him become the best spiker in the world. He might not even do strength training. You know why? Because that might not be an area he needs to change. He might come to the table with adequate, or his weaknesses in other areas might dictate our training time in other areas. So for me, it's not about saying, well, you're a volleyballer, you're a spiker, you've got to do strength training. I want to take an individual approach and a holistic approach. So I'm very reluctant to use any of those bullshit statistics that you see float about, 1.2 times body weight. And this whole theory was popularised in the interpretation of Vereshchansky's work in relation to depth jumping. And I say allegedly because I don't speak or write Russian. I can't read or write Russian or speak it. And I can't say that it was there, but there was a lot of references to you have to be able to do 1.5 times your body weight in a squat before you can do this sort of depth jump. I mean, that's the first reference I saw to this. And others who went on and wanted to be positioned themselves as experts started quoting figures. It's like saying, you've got to be able to, what was the word? Structural strength requirements. You've got to be able to, bicep curl with a neutral grip 1.2 times what you can bicep curl with, like give me a break. Is that the only variable? And do we measure it all on that one variable? Sorry, Chris. I don't know if I answered your question though, John.
Yeah. No,
So you might be able to say, listen, let's take a gymnast. Because I did that exercise earlier on by saying, okay, what athletes would need to squat over 100 kilos? But you can say, okay, what about body weight? Let's say the gymnast weighs, 45 kilos? A lightweight gymnast might weigh 45 kilos, like the smaller one. And well, maybe they could squat 45 kilos. But my question is, should they be in the way that it's being done? Because the only variable that people talk about is the load. I want to talk about the recruitment, what muscles are doing what. That's more important than the load. So you could get a gymnast, put 45 kilos and say, look, they're squatting it, but they're doing this with their back arch, they're showing their dominance on one leg, they're reinforcing their dominance right, left, or whatever. You with me? They're causing damage, but you're ticking the box saying, listen, we've squatted our body weight. Is that really helping the athlete? Not at all. How you use your body and how you optimise your body's function to perform your sport is far more important than how much load you've got on the bar. And people are so brain dead that they just want to measure on load because it requires thinking to do everything else. They just want to be able to measure load. Load's a variable. There's no debate about that. But is load the most important variable? No. Is it the only variable? No, as Jim Rohn would say.
So how would you determine whether or not you could get a large bang for your buck, so to speak, by training?
A certain way? This is what I do. In my conversation, and we'll do this session later, in my conversations with the athlete, I'd look at their training history, I'd look at their training results, and we'd discuss the opportunities for further improvement. We'd put all the opportunities on the table and we'd make a decision. But at no point in time would I make a blanket, all-American, well, you're only squatting 1.25 times your body weight, we have to get up to 1.5. Now, I have had Australian athletes with me who have been told, you need to squat X percentage of your body weight. And in this case, the one I'm referring to, he'd already had one ACL reconstruction. He should not have been squatting. Full stop. And I said, you go back and tell them that if they want to test, tell them they can test you on the deadlift. I'm not giving you any help with your squat. I don't want you to squat. They also did the same for the bench press. Well, guess what? He'd also had 2 shoulder surgeries in his time. Like, give us a break. You want them to test on exercise that their joints don't even work properly, and you're going to judge them an athlete, and you're going to get them to focus on making their joints worse so they can tick your box? That athlete is now injured and out of contract because he was not willing to stand up against that system strongly enough. And he's not the only one. There are more athletes injured and out of contract than there are in the game because they were too compliant with their expectations. But, you can't help a brain-dead athlete. And I'm not saying he was brain-dead, but he was too compliant. And team sport athletes have a higher expectation of compliance and conformity, more so in Australia than America. In Australia, they don't even want to let them train outside their team environment. At least in America, in the off-season, they're a free agent, yeah. Most athletes, pro athletes in this country can train with whoever they want out of season. In Australia, it's a penal colony. They police everything. They're not allowed to train outside their team, even in their off-season. They're told how many weeks holiday they get. An Australian professional athlete is lucky to get 4 weeks to be left alone. And even then, it's mandated by their players' union. It's a whole different ballgame. I do prefer the American freedom. There you go. Something I like about America. And I love America. Don't get me wrong. People come up with this because like if it's black, I call it black. If it's white, I'm going to tell you it's white. Like, anyway.
I was thinking how some of the fastest sprinters and some of the highest jumpers that I've encountered in my life, how they could hardly touch their toes or do a static whatever, get their foot to their butt.
Yep.
And simultaneously,
So the two questions you have to ask is, and this, most people say, well, therefore it's not necessary. The question I ask is, how much could they have been better? Because this is what's going to happen. There'll be a time in the future when they'll have to be better, and they'll have to do that to be better. That makes sense? So I don't look at today's sporting performances, I look at the future sporting performance. In 4 years' time, expectations will be higher. We need to train for then. Everyone models on the now. I don't model on the now, I model on the future. I don't model off a now. Make sense? Now, let's talk about tennis. There's some great models in tennis. Do you understand Novak Djokovic? Have a watch Novak Djokovic. He can do the splits on court and hit a ball at the same time. His flexibility is 100 times better than anybody else in tennis. He is on another level, and his technical model is based upon his physical qualities. But no one else can do that, and no one won't. But the point they're missing is he doesn't lose many games through injury. And no one else picks up that he's the most flexible person in tennis, and they don't model it. Anyway, another story. Greg.
I was going to say it's going to be interesting to see what, I guess, for the next Olympics, swimming, how the training changes for long distance swimming, because once we in from America, absolutely smoked everyone by a lot, and just what they're going to do to compete with that in 4 years.
Do you know what training methods that athlete was using to dominate?
I don't know.
Yeah.
But if she keeps doing what she's doing and everyone else keeps doing what they're doing.
I can make some predictions about, generally speaking, what's going to happen in the game. In tennis, injuries will increase, shoulder surgeries will increase, and training volume will increase. It's just been a trend. I had never, sorry? Tennis?
Is it the training or is it the...
Okay, let's give some insights. Every sport's got its challenges, but tennis is up there. One third to one half, like 30 to 66% of all tennis is played on hard surface. So you've got three surfaces, but only the Europeans play a lot of clay. How many clay courts have you seen? In the Western world, so we speak in America and Australia, there are very few clay courts. So the majority of tennis players in Australia and America play predominantly on hard court and a little bit on grass court. See, grass court and a clay court require incredible upkeep, so they have to be really well looked after. So most of the courts in those countries are just hard court. So number one is played on hard surface. It's harder than basketball surface. So a wood surface is tough enough in itself. You want to try playing basically on concrete. So number one. Number two, it's a multi-directional sport. So you're going to use your whole body, rotation in particular. Number three, it's a unilateral sport, kiss of death. And number four, it can go anywhere between 2 and 5 hours in duration per game. It's one-handed sport, one hand, one leg. So it ticks a few boxes in terms of brutality. And I've done a lot of work in a lot of sports, but that's one I've paid a lot of attention to recently. And I can tell you the majority of athletes in tennis could not be rehabilitated fully. There is almost no chance of an Australian tennis player playing beyond the age of 24. They're normally broken, so broken they cannot play. Having their hip shaved at the age of between 18 and 22 is now the most popular surgery in tennis in Australia. Now we've got about 4 to 6 players that will be in the top 100. And there isn't a single one of them that hasn't had surgery to my knowledge. Now, I know Tomic's had quite a few surgeries. I know Millman's had quite a few surgeries. I'm not sure how many Kyrgios has, but if you have a look at the Kyrgios' posture, he's just one step away from one. There are very few tennis players, if any in Australia, that could play 3 months in a row and be available. Now, that's just not the nature of tennis. That's now the nature of off-field training as well. Because all sports have a side effect. And when physical preparation fail to recognise that our entire time should be spent addressing the side effects of the sport, the negative side effects, that should be our priority, until we completely rebalance the athlete, which is never ending because they go back and keep doing it to themselves, then we've got no time thinking about how we're going to make them a better athlete. We're actually going to make them a better athlete by helping them not be injured. So if an athlete's neutral here and then starts degrading, let's say injury occurs here, between here and here, they have neural inhibition. They have metabolic cost of movement that is far outside of what it needs to be. So from here to here is a performance enhancement. People think that's all about injury prevention. It's about performance enhancement. And then they wait to get injured, then they start their rehab process. This is crazy. So study tennis players. I ask this question, how many American tennis players go pro after college? Well, I don't know the answer, but I can tell you it's going to be very few. Why aren't they surviving college? Why don't they come through? Why isn't college a great feeder for the pro circuit? Because they're engaged in American college strength and conditioning programs. Kiss of death. One of the most common goals of a tennis player in my country is to go and get a scholarship at America. No, I mean, if it's for cultural and educational purposes, it's fantastic, but if it's for tennis, it's kiss of death. Because the volume of training they do at American colleges in all sports is crazy. There was a time in American colleges where only the strength training was done with college, with football. They were great. So I worked with a swimmer in after the '88 Olympics. She failed to qualify in '92, so she went to America. And I worked with her by correspondence, and when she wasn't with me, and that was in the days for email, so it was letters, and maybe faxes, faxes. And I had no issues with her strength program. Like she wasn't told, you can't do that, you have to do our strength program. Because guess what? They didn't have a dry land program out of season at that college in that era. Now you fast forward, that was 92, 93, 93, 94. She became the first swimmer, non-American swimmer, to win the Swimmer of the Year award at Div 1 level and set an American Div 1 swimming record. Just another example of how we've shaped history. Now, that was 94. You fast forward to 2014, we had a young American girl get picked up, go to college, and I said to her, the one thing you need to do is tell them you've got a program and you're doing your own program. Well, guess what? That didn't last. Now, she wanted to go to the last Olympics, and guess what? She didn't. And I believe that opportunity was denied in large part because she conformed with the expectations at college. So now going to college, if you've got a superior physical preparation program and you go to an American college, you're stuffed. Because they won't let you, generally speaking, do your own thing. Another discussion for another day. I digress. Question, or we wrap? Yeah, no, I don't, but I'm going to take a few guesses. And I know nothing about her history. I just know that she's a big, powerful African American. I would say that her genetic tissue tension is pretty good. And all I need to do is touch them once, just put my hand on them, I can say straight away, this explains your longevity, or this explains why you've got flexibility. And what I did, and this is one of the ways I tested this, because I wanted to understand why skiers, why do skiers have such a high incidence of knee injury and some didn't? So I tested this over many years with female and male athletes from 3 different countries, and I got to the point where I could say, if I did a flex test and a tissue tension test, I will tell you, without knowing anything else, how many injuries you're going to have in your career. So now, because I've intentionally focused on that ability, I can put my hands on an athlete and say, this is good. I like your genetics in terms of tissue tension. Because that's highly correlated with our injury incidence and the length of our career. So I'm just going to guess that she's got good tissue genetics without knowing anything else. The question I can answer is, could I make her better? Yeah. Every athlete can be better. And that's the whole basis of our approach, is what's the best way to train and how can we do it better? If we don't take that attitude, we're going to be paid redundant pretty quickly. So I like to dominate in sport because it's confirmation that our training methods are on track. I like athletes who go to 4 and 5 Olympic Games. They're my preferred ones. 3 is the minimum. Anything under 3, we didn't really fulfill our potential. I had a young girl swimmer. She went to the 80 Olympics, 84 Olympics, had 2 kids, missed the 88 Olympics. I brought her back for the 92 Olympics, and then she went AWOL after the 92 Olympics. That's another story. She missed selection into 96, and I think she could have gone to 2000. So it would have been 80, 84, 88, 92, 96. She could have gone to 6 Olympic Games. Now she wakes up every day and cries about it. Now I might be exaggerating, but I'm not exaggerating much. She used to send me letters and emails after missing 96 and saying, Ian, do you think I could come back in? Do you think you'd come back? And I just gave her the bigger uppercut as I could. I said, well, it depends who you got to train you. If they knew what they're doing, you'd have a chance. Because she missed the 96 Olympic Games because she left the reservation, to use a discriminative American Indian term. My apologies to my American Indian brothers and sisters, to John and Greg and other original owners of the land. So yeah, I love it when we go to Olympics for a long, long time. So in 92, I helped a boy in a small way go to the kayaking in 92. He had a training approach on land, on water, that I didn't agree with. He went and did it. He got glandular fever and was in glandular fever through 96 and 2000. It took him 4 years to work it out. He got on some really good vitamins to help save him. He went to 92, 96, 2000, 2004, 2008. He went to 5. And the last 4, his body couldn't recover from his training load. How many could he gone to? He went to 5. The most medalled kayaker in Australian history, he has a gold, a bronze and a silver. Gold, silver and a bronze. And 5 Olympics. And I didn't agree with his water training. So imagine what we could have done. So everyone says, oh, look how great that is. And I say, that's great, but what could have we done? How many Olympics could he have gone to? At least 6. So I worked with another boy in the 92 in basketball. He was the boy that chested up with Charles Barkley in Salt Lake City in the lead up to the 92 Olympics, was it? It was a pre-Olympic trial game, and him and Charles had a bit of a confrontation. He's a shooting guard, and Charles was big. So he got pretty popular in America because he did that a few times. So he had 2 stints in the NBA. He went to 92, 96, 2000, 2004. And I don't believe that would have happened if I hadn't taught him how to stretch. I'm not saying he was compliant completely all the way through, but just enough time to change their flexibility even in the short term can make a difference to their career. Every athlete who I work with, even if for a short period of time, will have a longer career for it. And I can tell, I'll keep you injury free, you'll go away and you'll get more injuries, but you'll still have a longer career from what I did for you. And every athlete that I've worked with will come back and tell you that. Every single one of them. So you can change their athletic career even in a short period of time if you're good and do good things to them. Anyway, I digress. Too many stories. Any final questions?
What's the ratio of you actually stretching athlete clientele compared to them stretching themselves? Like sometimes they get like people that are after this one.
Yes. If you want to create demand for services, and if you want to be someone's bitch, then you service them, you do that to them. But if you want to empower them, my ratio is about 1 to 4. If you're not willing to do 4 times what you want me to do, then I probably aren't going to do it for you. See, the challenge that I have is that most athletes that I work with travel internationally, and I'm not with them. If they're relying on me, then I'm creating a dependency that will result in failure, because I can't be there. Like, I'm a really antisocial person. I don't want to go to all sporting events, I'm sorry. And I hate crowds. So unless you're paying me pretty big bucks, I'm not going to go. But, I mean, I can't be everywhere all the time. Like we've got an athlete this weekend racing in Germany, and it's a very important race. I'm not there. So if they were relying on that, it doesn't work. But if you want to do what all chiropractors and other physical therapists do, go ahead. The only way you'll get better is if you see me in person. You know what I'm saying? So you can generate demand for your services. You can do it. I don't recommend it because you don't heal someone; they have to heal themselves. So my concern is the basic fundamental that we don't heal you; you have to heal yourself. And when the coaches come to the program and they get to learn some of the special tricks, they wow, I can heal people really quick if I do it myself. We have to pull them back and say, no, if I see you doing that, we'll throw you out of the program. Because unless you're empowering them to heal themselves, unless they're showing commitment to themselves, it's not going to work anyway. It's like fat loss. You can run someone around the car park here. You can even get them to get a TV dinner, light and easy, sent to their house. And then when that program is over, guess what's going to happen? Straight back, because you haven't dealt with the cause of the issue. The whole weight loss, the whole fat loss industry is a scam in this country, designed to create revenue for facilities in the country. Make sense? They need a good talking to and a slap around the face. And what I'm saying is, it's more about the psychology and the emotion than it is about anything else. It's not about the food they put in their mouth. So what people don't understand is this. You can have 10 people put the same thing in their mouth and have 10 different responses. Explain that to me. It's not only diverse chemistry, it's diverse emotion. Emotion determines the way the body absorbs food. So the thing, we can't control the chemistry as much, we can control the psychology and the emotion. I really have digressed. Yes, Chris.
I want to know, so what sports would you say are easier on the body? Like, so somebody could get into it as they get older.
Yep. What you find is most athletes will get into cycling. Probably cycling, swimming, if they can roll their shoulders. But so triathlon is really important. Obviously the running component can be a bit of an issue. You might be going to a team event. But the majority of the athletes that I've trained, if I said the number one sport they've gone into, it's some form of triathlon. Cycling or triathlon.
What about a team sport?
Well, you can forget about the hardcore ones. So you're not going to play pickup basketball. You forget about anything that's really involves standing or running for many of them. So, yeah, they don't get to play too many team sports. There are competitions that we play in our country, in Australia, which are designed for age categories. For example, if you're playing someone at the 70 above, they wear a certain coloured jersey and you're not allowed to tackle them. They have these really good rules to allow them to keep playing. And so, within certain age categories, there's some things you can't do. So that, it's quite funny though to watch the Golden Oldies game of rugby or something like that. So no, team sports isn't real popular, but the individual sports are. But most people in their businesses and pretty tied up, they don't have time for team sport. It just works into their schedule better. But that group, they get that same socialisation, that group experience by joining their local triathlete club or similar. I've been pretty impressed. Some of the athletes I've worked with who I didn't think they'd be walking for too many more years, they've really kept their joints alive through cycling. Okay.
Cycling, I assume, would need a lot of certain stretching, like stretching quads.
Critical. Quads and hip flexors, critical. Absolutely critical. More so than even the cyclists realise. There's a lot of work we can do to help elite cyclists become better. They're in a very unique situation where their hip flexors are shortened in a shortened state. So the forward flex, it's a forward flex sport. So they're strengthening the hip flexors in a really short state. So that's a double whammy. Okay, we're up at that, Tom?